I did that whole intro and they couldn't hear me at all. But now they can hear me. Yeah, they can. I'm just being quiet. 2 days ago, we had a huge election in the United States, and technology played a tremendous role in it. Today, on The Rundown, we're going to talk about the role of technology, how it impacts campaigns and elections. Welcome to The Rundown. One of these days, I'll actually get the show started without a hiccup. Every day it's something different. Here's the non-hiccup for today. I realized that so far, I've left one light in my office off for every episode so far. I mean, there have only been two, but I've left one key light off for every show. Today they're all on, but you couldn't hear me. In any case, hi everyone. Welcome to The Rundown. I'm David. And as I said, we in America are coming down off of a huge election, an important election. We're not going to talk really about the politics today, but we are going to talk about the technology today. And I'm so excited to have an amazing group of folks with me to talk about this. Of course, my partner in crime over here, Tamara. How are you, Tamara?
Hello, I'm good. I'm so glad to be here.
So we are two of the three Americans on the panel tonight.
We are.
The other American with us here today is Lois. Hello, Lois. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing well.
Now you're the West Coast, right? With Tamara.
I am California.
All right. So two Californians. I'm Florida, and then way up north. Hello, Dave.
How's
Dave
it going?
Troutman. How are you, sir?
I should say, how's it going?
Pretty good. So now, where
everybody
are you
knows
located?
the cliche. I'm located in a place called Alberta. The capital city is called Edmonton.
Alberta.
Edmonton is
Canada.
famous for its hockey team and its football team. And
Well, now
our
what kind
hockey
of
team-
football? I mean, if we're going to talk politics here, we might as well get down to what kind of.
CFL football. Does that matter?
But is it the kind where you actually use your
CFL
feet?
is a four-down version of the American game.
Oh, okay.
And you guys do four, we do three,
So
and
it's
our
not
yardage
real
is
football.
100 meters, not 110, or whatever you guys do. So
And all of
yeah,
that is
there's-
Canada, right?
that's Canada. Canada is a generic term for a very cold place.
Yes, it is, and a very polite place, and but also polite, by the
Oh,
way.
I don't intend to be polite today. No
Not
way.
today?
Not at all. No,
No?
I'm going to interrupt. I'm going to be controversial.
Oh, I
intend to
love
make
it.
trouble.
Oh my God, we have the best Dave ever, but we also have the best Leo ever from across the pond. It's 4:30 tomorrow evening or something. What? It's like 1 in the morning.
No,
or something.
it's only 2:05.
2:05, dear Lord. Thank you so much for staying up with us, Leo. I'm really excited to have you,
No problem.
especially and to have a few different people, different perspectives who can talk about the role that technology plays in campaigning and in elections, not just in America, but around the world. So let's just start with what seems to me to be a turning point in the role that technology played in elections, and that was actually back in 2016. Technology has played an important role for decades before that in the registration, in counting, in reporting, in all of that, in campaigning certainly. But what happened in 2016, I think, was that all of a sudden this technology that could be a hopeful and helpful part of campaigning and elections all of a sudden showed a darker side. So my question is, to start, what did we see this year? On balance, would you say that the technologies that we saw, and we'll dive into them more specifically in a moment, but the technologies that you saw play out in this campaign and in this election, helpful or hurtful to the overall process? Lois, let me start with you. What do you think?
Well, it depends on your perspective. If you're an individual and you're looking at the technology that the voter's using, well, that's one thing. But if you're looking at the campaigns and the technologies they're using, that's another. I actually think it went more smoothly this year than it did in 2016. But maybe it's just because that's what I saw.
You shared a really interesting piece in Discord before we went live about uh, the technologies, the old technologies that we used to use in
Yeah.
campaigning,
So
and their correlations today.
So I was looking at from a voter's perspective. There's I talk to my husband, my neighbors. I'm one-on-one talking to people. That's old style. New style, I'm still one-on-one talking to people, but maybe I'm texting or doing a direct message or something like that. And then when you get into the broader area, well, I have lawn signs. Back in the 1800s, you'd have a little pin, a little political pin, or maybe if you were a suffragist, you'd have a banner on your dress or something on yourself to tell other people what you were like, whether it's a t-shirt or a hat or whatever. And that's still going on today. Then when we get into the more public things, I might write a letter to the editor. I might send letters to my friends in distant places. Today, well, I might post something on Facebook, or I might, use the technology to accomplish the same goals as I was doing before. Locally, I might have had, a club in our town for a particular purpose, for or against something, or to support someone or something. Now, the place that you join is national. You have a national group that's thousands of people instead of a little local group that's 15 people, but it's still a group working towards what you're interested in.
So what we did, or what we do, is it's the same type of work, but the
Yep.
way in which we're able to do it is drastically different. And that way that we're able to do it, that really is the key piece, right, Tamara? Because I mean,
Yep.
fundamentally, the reach that I can have beyond just a room full of folks, or beyond the number of letters that I can write with my hand, is just,
Right.
it's tremendous.
I think that's all true. I think for me, you can't talk about present day without going back to 1996 and Web 1.0, which I think I talked to you about a little bit, because the promise of the web was going to be that people would gain more access to information, which we have. The problem with the web has been the Google Cloud, that what is getting curated is beautiful on both sides. If you look at whatever you are into, it looks great. The technology is amazing. You have greater reach, but often you have greater reach to people that the algorithm has given you, and you are gaining information. And that's the one thing that I think is fundamentally different, Lois, than what we were able to do when we were talking with a group of people, because we were talking with a group of people who came into a conversation from various points of view, and you were having a conversation about, this is what I think and this is what I think. And what happens more often than not is that people are going to the group of like-minded individuals having a conversation with people like themselves. And I think that's the key piece that started way back when, that has amplified in a way that if you flipped through channels and you watch Fox versus MSNBC, you are seeing fundamentally different takes on the exact same piece of data. And it is by the person for their consumer. It is not for a mass audience. So in that sense, I feel like we have expanded our reach, but expanded our reach to like-minded individuals. And that's the part that I think is a little problematic, that we have to really go out of our bubble, out of our comfort zone, to go searching for the other side. Whereas in the old days, the other side would just be part of the conversation. And I think that's the polarizing fact that has been the negative side of it. But it's gotten more beautiful, and graphics and all of the things that we're able to use now is better. And technology allows us something. And I think that dichotomy is one of the things that is the real discussion that we have to really grapple with, both positive and negative.
I think part of the reason that I was drawn back to 2016 is not only because of what we saw here in America, but also Brexit and things. It was happening around the world. The way technology was allowing for mass disinformation, rampant misinformation, the way that technology allowed for foreign interference in different elections, micro targeting, things like that. Leo, what am I wrong that? Am I wrong to see technology as part of the problem in the way that elections have are run and present so many challenges?
I think I think you've come on you're touching on some very interesting points here that technology has changed the way both the electioning works, but it also changes the way that media works. And I think that's the biggest thing that I think is that the way that the media has responded to the change in technology has been very slow. Typically, we always have a discussion when you talk about new technology and you talk about how governments are very slow to change. So legislation is very slow to change, whether it's how, they come out with the new ideas of how to power cars and then legislation follows very slowly behind. But in this case, what you've had is that the media has been slow to respond, which means that the big media that thought they were in control of messaging suddenly found that they were the ones who were in quotes, old media, and they weren't in the control of the way that they were able to push the message out. And that means that you were getting, and Tamar has mentioned it, is you're getting unfiltered content. Now, you may argue, and you can easily argue, that maybe we were getting too filtered content in the past, and you were only ever hearing the message that you were supposed to be in quotes told, and now we're getting the messages from everywhere. So it is absolutely, as you say, it's a two-edged sword. You're getting stuff that maybe you never heard about from sources that you don't know about, and then you're getting stuff that and the dichotomy I find is that old media, in particular in the 2000 election, was so slow in reporting, and actually in this one they got it all wrong. They got so much of what they said was going to happen. It's going to be a close race. It's going to be this. It's going to be that. It's going down to the wire. And it was like, what tea leaves were you reading? Because you weren't reading the ones of the people that are coming out of the polls.
I think the main difference, though, this time, and this is a huge change for this election specifically, is the consumer culture of news. So, for example, you had influencers invited to the conventions and as part of a secondary media and had media access, which is very different than we've ever had before. So you do have a very different type of reporting happening through TikTok and through YouTube that is new for this year, because they were always there was always fringes that did it, but now they were being invited to the party, which is how media has done a lot of their things. Movie premieres are also done the same way, right? So I think that's a big change from this particular election that is vastly different from before. And that does change the conversation a little bit, because there isn't a news source. Like, everybody's in competition with that, right? They're in competition to be an influencer. And in many ways, the news organizations, which used to be an unfettered, like, this is where I go for my information, became, this is where I am now competing as a major news organization with influencers to do what? Influence.
There's a difference in though, because there is no standards for influencers, for people who just, I'm going to have a blog. With the newspapers,
I mean, heck, we're here. Like, no one asked.
I was going to say,
no one asked us our opinion.
No one asked my credentials.
You could argue we've hit the bottom of the barrel of the standards, but we're here.
But no, my point is that when you hear something on the internet, you don't know if it's true or not.
Yeah.
And you have to figure out a way to decide for yourself whether you're going to believe it. And that's
who's got the authority? Yeah.
And
we used to give the authority to the newspapers, and the news channels. We gave them the power. what was
Yeah.
good.
So let me just
And
let,
they
let me
were
pick
there-
up on that
Absolutely.
one second.
But I was
Leo.
going
Hold
to
on.
say, Dave.
Hold on one second. I just want to pick up on that, Dave, real quick. That
Oh, I get to be real quick because everybody got 3 or 4 minutes.
no,
right?
real quick.
Right.
Stop
That's how
talking.
that works.
No, no talking aloud. No. I just wanted to say that the what you've pointed out is that the inner what you Tamara, what you talked about, the internet, or at least Web 1.0, the whole idea of it is the great democratization. Everyone can have a voice. Everyone can speak their mind. I don't have to just buy into what one person says, but here we are now without reliable sources, or I would say even more than that, not just reliable sources, without technology that can guide us to reliable sources. Maybe that's
Right.
one of my biggest struggles, is that technology has given everyone a voice, but has robbed us, or has not given us yet, the capacity to filter those voices in a meaningful way. Let me just come back to Dave real quick, and then back to Leo. Did you want to share something else, Dave?
You're always going to put real quick on the end when it comes to me, right? I've got to be able to do it in the 6 seconds okay. To comment on a couple of things, and I like what Lois started with, which is we used to gather in a room with other real people in 3D, and we had discussions about what was important to us. And we had people who could hear that and then say, I think that's important to me too, and then the discussion would start. We don't do that anymore. We have broadcasters everywhere. You talk about influencers. They're just looking for an audience. They're not there to tell you anything important. They're not going to give you anything you didn't already know from other sources or shared with other people. But very few of us are sitting in a room together talking about politics or talking about party affiliations. The other thing I heard was, the signage, the caps, the buttons. In Britain, they have the big... it's like a flower with a ribbon for any who's a candidate. They walk around with this thing on, so you know they're the candidate.
Wait, Leo, are you wearing one?
So I'm wearing 2 things. The one is the poppy for remembrance, and the second one is the bring the hostages home one, which is quite common here to wear some.
So this
sort
is
of
push
affiliation.
button politics right there. You
Right.
see, and people with backsacks, they got their politics all over the backsack. And I guess my sense is that what's happened with technology is it's separated us from the politics. It's taken it and pushed it away. We have influencers, but we've diluted our own influence by awarding these other people the power to tell us what we should be thinking. And we give it to Facebook and we give it to Google, and they have algorithms that think Dave wants this. I'm going to give Dave this. Then we get into the self-reinforcing bubbles. The what do they call that? They call it the bias. I'm close. Nope, not going to get it. Anyway, I also see that there's a huge difference here. In Canada, we get 60 days of campaigning. That's it. You guys get 4 years of it, and you get fundraising for 4 years, and you get all that. Okay, we get 60 days. All the parties got to talk, and everybody has to be attentive. And this helps the public pay attention. What happened this year is people tuned out all over the place. And the outcome was that more people went to the polls to do one side than went to the polls for the other. They were disaffected somehow. Well, yeah, they were disconnected before the politics even started. There's a duality in the American system, which is a flaw. They only have the 2 sides. And if you're in Italy, you got 19. And in Canada, you got 5. I don't know how many they have in England. Great Britain. And this kind of duality is the fight. This is where the media fails. Our media has to cover everybody at once because we don't vote for a prime minister. We vote for the guy who's going to represent us, or person, and they're going to go and decide who their leader is amongst themselves, and that person gets to run the country. That's all you get. And after that, we expect our local person to take care of business.
Right.
And I got a one-on-one with the person, I'm good. But we don't have to get in rooms and talk about all this stuff because we know we're just talking to the one guy who's going to be representing me. And I'm hoping and trusting, because it's a representative democracy and we give them that power, that they'll do what I think and what my neighbors in that want at every level: civic, provincial, federal.
I was
So
thinking.
I think You talk about the media, and I'll finish up here real quick. You talk about the media, but I always put media and power together. We give people the power to influence us, and we can take
Right.
it away again. So, and I got
And
another
you
point,
know,
but
and
I'll do it later when you have a short bit.
that's fascinating. And in fact, as we were preparing for today, Dave, I was thinking to myself about media and specifically about social media and their responsibility
No responsibility
vis-a-vis. No,
whatsoever.
no, I
No,
understand that
they don't
legally.
have any.
No, I understand legally they
No, they
don't.
don't because they're private corporations. And
Absolutely,
in America, a
absolutely,
Right.
corporation gets all the power. Yes.
absolutely. But morally and ethically, and I'm not suggesting they should have responsibility. I'm just asking the question. But that to me, that is a it's an ethical question around that human beings have to make a decision about for other human beings. What I'm really interested in is, for today at least, is that the other side of the coin, the technology side of the coin, and you know how the tools that we've been given have either helped or hurt, as you described. Leo,
Yeah.
I cut you off before.
I'll have to be super really quick. So I think the first thing that, and Dave mentioned this, thank you, Dave, is the point that when it is in this media area, and then the media is supposed to be trusted to come up with a solution, and the media is missing the target so often at the moment.
They're
And I
interested
think
in the
that's
money.
one of the biggest.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest problems. We had this with Brexit. The media were telling us this is going to be the result. They're going to say this is how it's going to come about. They discard and we, on a program here in the UK this morning, they read out all of the headlines of some of the newspapers around the world, and there's still some of the very left-wing newspapers and big newspapers that you've heard of, like the Guardian, etc., are still putting out headlines that are almost discriminatory against the people who voted in one way, and you're going, this, you are losing. Why would anybody under a certain age trust this newspaper? Because you're not reporting in either a fair or an equal way, or even, and as I said, half of them are saying it's going to be a close race, half of them, and this has happened over and over again. And I think newspapers and other media are behind on the technology, and I would go further and say this about technology, which you were saying, David, you're asking about technology. I always think about the W's, what, why, where, when, but the only thing that when you get with technology is how. Technology does just focusing on the technology doesn't answer the why you're doing it, or
Doesn't
where
give you
or when.
why.
It just says the how.
It'll tell you where quite often, but that, or what they were wearing.
It will.
But yeah,
and you're sitting there thinking, right, so people are using this technology, and absolutely, with any new technology, those that work out how to use it, and you can say it's gaming it, that's one argument, but it's how you use that technology, you go forward. Hollywood exists because they went, we've worked out how to use this technology, and we're going to produce movies, and we're going to do the best movies ever. Now you're finding that movies are produced in other areas, and technology always moves. The one thing that ever happens when you get to the top of the tree in technology is you get knocked off by somebody else. And in this area, particularly, I'd say, you mentioned about Brexit, you've mentioned about other areas, in the influencing of voters, and that's really important to me, because every single person, regardless of what you think about them, still ends up with the same number of votes. There's no quality in
I
votes.
saw that this year with this election. There were many Zoom groups who were supporter groups of whatever side, and they were using Zoom to gather together and speak to each other face to face. And I think that's a really powerful thing, and it's the next thing that'll happen.
And actually, Dave,
not just in America, probably all over the place.
So Tony actually is watching, and he also shared that one of the things that Kamala Harris did was utilize Zoom with multiple different groups, and that's something that we haven't really seen before. So utilizing different technologies to connect with voters is also really just fundamental.
But
I think
one of the things that. Sorry, Lois.
Let me just let Leo finish up, and then we'll come back over to Lois.
Yeah, I think the one thing, and this will go on to some of the other areas, the biggest problem we have, and it's already being talked about from Tamara, it's talked about from Lois, the legitimacy of the people you're talking to, and I think this is the biggest problem I have with this technology. Um, I I know that David Paskin's a real human being because I physically sat in the room. I actually had dinner with him, so I know he's human. I know that that's real, but you sit there with a lot of this, and
You have
particularly
no
where it
idea
was
if
going
I'm
with other
real, do
things.
you? Yeah.
Yeah, you just don't know. So you're sitting there. There's a lot of people who are watching and hearing and seeing, and the authenticity, because there is no authentic stamp. There's nothing when you come into says I have to hold up my hand for my fingerprint to prove that I am who I am. But I'm allowed to influence and allowed to talk. And the same on TikTok, the same on all of these things. There's nothing to say who you are and where your source is when you wouldn't even be able to spend $1 in any other way
How
without
many
being able
people
to
do you
prove who you
think
are in some
know how to
things.
find that stuff out? This is another thing I come across
Well,
is I get told that, Timothy Snyder said in his book, and I'm going, who are you to say that and interpret Timothy that way? Because I don't have any credentials for this person who told me this thing. If I'm talking to my neighbor, I know his credentials. So,
but I think that's the real key to what one of the sides of technology is that it multiplies itself so quickly. And there isn't enough time to kind of put an infrastructure in to learn now how do you do media analysis? How do you do like when we're talking when you mentioned who, what, where, why, like that's what we taught kids how to do so that when they were grown-ups, they could use that technology, right? That they could use those conversation starters. Kids today have millions of images touching them every single day. And so, where do you get that education piece, both for them, but then also for us as adults? How do we navigate what's being said to us? And I think because it's happening so fast and so much, it is sometimes just easier to be in your bubble and go, hey, these are my people and they believe that and I believe that. And that's the danger where we as like humanity has to kind of reckon with. We have to say some of this is the responsibility of media, but some of it is also responsibility of ourselves and going, where am I going to make sure that I'm getting all of the
mhm.
information and how am I going to discern whether that is accurate information or not? Because completely false information is pretty. It is like it looks great.
It's
Technology makes
seductive.
it look
Yes.
wonderful. It's
Yeah.
seductive. It does all the things that it's supposed to do. And I think
Hmm.
that's the part that is a little bit more difficult because we need to be doing more media literacy in schools, but that changes
Hmm.
so quickly. So how does that happen? And what responsibility do we have as people, as humans, to say, I am going to question what I'm hearing as truth, and I'm going to do that extra research to make sure that what I am attributing to my beliefs is not something that I just heard somewhere. And that's really tough because it all looks so real and so
Hmm.
accurate.
One of my happiest days was when my son challenged me. I thought he's thinking for himself now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, this is great. All
I
right,
mean,
he's going to argue with me.
we'll
Great.
have to come around and talk about the role that generative AI and deep fakes and all that stuff plays. But Lois, let me just let you jump in here.
I
So,
have good ideas about that there. Yes.
Okay.
so one of the things that I've noticed in our discussion is the overgeneralization that technology does this, gives us that, thinks this, changes. Technology is a word like knowledge that is describes 1,000 different things. And
Hmm.
so when Leo is talking about the polls that were taken, well, pollsters use one kind of technology, but other things are done with different things. And so, yes, technology is constantly changing, but it's also multi-headed. There's lots of different things out there that's affecting us. And I think Tamara's right in the money when she says, how do you know it's true? And I used to have, when I'd come across something in my email, somebody would pass something on, and I would go, oh, I'm going to look on Snopes. And I would
Right.
look up and find out, no, that's not a real thing. But what do you do if Snopes were to be purchased by some villainous
Microsoft.
foreign
Right.
actor? You know, where, how do you know who owns the thing you're trying to rely on? How do you
Mhm.
know if we can figure out whose which human being is controlling which thing, then we're going to be better off.
So one of the things
That's that power thing, yes.
one of the things that in my naivete, would love to see is a technology come along that can help us do that work of discernment, the work of discerning fact from fiction, real from fake. And in fact, when we look at AI, Tamara, was this you? Who showed me this the other? Oh no, there was was it you? Someone showed me
Is
a
this
tool
turn
that
it in?
colleges have been using for a long
Yeah.
time, where
Oh,
you
yeah.
pump a paper. You have
Turnitin.com.
yes,
Yep.
Yeah.
thank you. Sorry.
That's what I was going to bring
That's
up. There's
been around
probably
forever, yeah.
So there
Yeah.
are tools that try and do that. The problem that we, at least in America, I think, with using those technologies is that, for better or worse, truth isn't black and white anymore. Fact isn't
Never
black and white
was.
anymore. And again, I'm not passing judgment on whether it is or not, because frankly, I could argue both ways. But it goes back to, I mentioned before we jumped on about a technology, or a technological way of looking at voting, which is, the question was asked, this is a TED Talk from a number of years ago, I think 10 years ago. The question was asked, why, when you have to do a recount, is it always a manual recount? Why don't we use
Because the human
computers?
beings are trusted and machines are not.
Well, yes and no.
So-
So the answer that he gave is that machines can't account for intent. So
Right.
if you have a bubble that you have to fill in, and the person fills the bubble in, over here, the
Obliquely,
machine will say, "Oh, that's not in the circle. That's not a count." But a human eye can look at that and say, "You know what? Their
I
intent,
know what he meant.
they have bad aim, but their intent was to fill in." This is a little bit like the Chads, the hanging Chads.
Or they
from-
got Parkinson's, they
That's
can't
like
do
it.
it. Yeah.
I was going to come on to that. But
Yeah, and so I guess what I'm saying is that machine learning is not able to yet. It can't do emotion. It can't do intent.
Okay.
I'd love for a machine to be able to help us with this, Leo.
No.
No,
I don't.
There, I'm on that
I
side.
agree.
Yes.
I'm like,
I'm
no.
on Leo's side.
No.
Absolutely.
No.
I'm climbing on
in
his
the
boat.
UK,
Yes.
In the UK, we vote on a piece of paper and you write across, and it is manually counted. We don't have this declared by a media company that they think this is the vote. We have a person who's there to actually vote, cover all of the votes, and you get a vote, you get a result when it's come out, and then and only then is it recounted if the vote is too close. There is none of this. I think the whole problem that you have there is because you want an instant answer. You're making instant coffee rather than actually having real coffee. That's your problem.
But,
You're
Leo,
trying to get a
that's
result
That's
too soon.
not true. You have media that is guessing what the results are
Right.
going to be. Our elections are not over yet.
Who's
Yeah.
asking the media to do it? The country's asking the media to do it, because in other countries we don't have the media doing this. We have real voting that is done on a piece of paper, that is counted, that is audited, and then it is issued.
And we
There is
do
none
too.
of this.
No, you
And
don't.
what-
That's where
Yes,
I'm
You
going
don't.
to jump in.
And we don't have machines involved. We are not.
I have to be
take the
honest.
machines away. Take the voting machines away.
Okay, wait.
I
And you will
agree
get
and I
Hold on,
disagree.
real
hold on,
counts.
hold on. Let me let Dave jump in, and then Tamara.
Yeah. I don't know if
Dave,
Lois is aware.
you weren't kidding when
and
you
I
said
don't know
you're
if
fired up for this today.
Oh,
This
I
is
am fired up. This is a
fantastic.
big deal for me.
I love
I've been
it.
a media literacy teacher for years, and this is right up my street. Leo's right in that we have a simple system, and you guys have page after page after page of decisions to make in voting. So it isn't like you're just voting president and it's all over. You vote for dog catcher and judges and all kinds of other people in that ballot, and it has to be a machine that helps with that. So I'm okay with letting the machines do that, but our system is so simple that I got to ask, how many people have worked in a voting station?
I had
Yeah.
voting at my house growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. There you
So
go.
that's the thing. Now you go to big places to vote. It used to be you would go to the local neighborhood and you would go into someone's house and vote in their
Yeah.
house. And so it was much smaller
Or even a
that
business down the street.
or a
Yeah.
business
Yeah.
down the street, not
Yeah.
a giant, the
Hmm.
school, because the school is the biggest place. So I think
Yeah.
that's there's something about it that I just remember voting growing up where it was so charming. Like I remember going
Yeah.
to vote at the little old lady's house who had the plates in the back, and there was
Yeah.
something really, really
Formal
intimate,
about it. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that just did feel a lot more intimate. I think people took things so seriously about, I
Hmm.
still remember the checking off the one person check, and they still do it. The one person checks off the address, the one person checks off your signature. I mean, there was an intimacy to it that technology's pulled us away. I have to say
Hmm.
though, now, um, I think having a preliminary count with a machine also gives me comfort because we are such a polarized nation where that I don't think people have trust for polls, right, for polling places like they did when you were going into someone's house, when you were going into
Hmm.
someone's home and voting in a very intimate way. I think there was a different sense of trust because it was so one-on-one and so intimate.
Hmm.
Now I feel like there's a lot of distrust in elections. So I think having that first thing be a machine and then having humans recalculate
Hmm.
is something that puts those checks and balance in place for us right
Speaking
now.
from a country where we made those machines, and Dominion is a Canadian company, but they won the case that you can't say our machines don't work
Right.
because they work. And they're only meant to work a certain way. But I think when we offload the responsibility that you've been talking about, the one on one, the community aspect, the honor of voting is
Absolutely.
taken away. And then we suspect the machines are doing something because we think, microwave is doing something to me. And we think, you know, um, video games are killing our children. We have these, they're called urban myths. We used to call them the urban myth, where it's that hitchhiker on the highway who disappears from a back seat. These kind of things are we're worried about technology and we create these myths. And now we're loaded with myths. We're getting myths that come out of the 1800s that people think, oh, this is a brand new idea. No, you can trace this argument back to the 1800s when they were trying to bring down a king. And they used rumor and innuendo and all the rest to do it.
By the
So
way,
I'm not surprised with media.
we're gonna talk
Media
about
only amplifies. It doesn't really create new. It always amplifies what's already going on. So
by the
I'll
way,
shut up.
we are gonna have a show about video games and mental health in children. So that is on my list. Lois, up, you got to unmute, Lois.
We can't hear you.
Back in 2000, we have this hanging Chad fiasco. And the legislature then passed a law that outlawed cards, the card system. And they added in the ones that didn't have Chads. And our system in our county was the best way, the most secure way that you could possibly do it. And they made us have to start all over again. So I was on that committee where we looked at all the voting systems and we tried to decide how we were going to do it in our little county. And our concern was to make sure that the voter could see who they voted for before they turned it in. Now we didn't want to have no machines involved because we wanted it to go fast. And so we came up with a system where you fill in the thing and it is run through a machine and read, but that document still exists. So you can do a recount. And we have procedures in process. So 10% of all of the ballots simply get counted by humans and compared to the machine counts. And so all of these checks and balances, all of these assurities that things are going to work right already exist. And they exist all over the country in different ways because elections are local. It's by county
Right.
by county. So there are hundreds of counties in our country. But technology is used by human beings.
Can I come in on that point?
Please.
So, I'm a technologist. I love technology. I think the problem that we have with this, and this is the problem, the fundamental problem, is that the minute you include technology in here, if you don't like something, you can use it as a blame. And that is what happens. That has been what we've seen over a number of elections and a number of times in fairly recent, and it makes the distrust in both the process and doing it well. Is my vote being counted? Am I worthy? The distrust of what's actually happening, and I honestly feel that the only way to take that back is to say we remove the technology in that process. Now, I do agree, Dave will agree with me, we're a simple system. We're voting, again, because like a lot of other countries, we're voting for the single one person. There's one piece of paper with a set of names, and you can only choose one name. So in a way, we have less to worry about because you're not having all the other votes that you have to do. So it is a simple process. When we have multiple votes on the same day, we have 2 or 3 different pieces of paper. So we'll have a white piece of paper to vote this, or an orange piece of paper that'll be for another vote. So you'll end up with 5 or 6 pieces of paper potentially. But it's a much simpler and easier process. What I'm saying is, as a technology person, I'm saying the problem isn't the technology, it's the trust in the technology, and you will never remove that while you have technology in that process. Unless as you said, unless it's at one level and then another level. So that's the problem.
Let me just bring this in. Let me just bring this comment in. I am fatness says, India, hold on, Dave. So bring a comment in from a viewer. Technology without transparency
that day
is a big driver.
And in Canada, we get it within hours. Yes.
Sorry, I just did a whole monologue myself to myself. Sorry about that, Dave. I want to hear what you said again because I wasn't listening. But I just want to bring in I am fatness is mentioned that technology without transparency, which to me is such an important word, is a big driver of distrust in the process. So if you can't,
thank you.
If
exactly
it isn't
what
clear
I'm saying.
how the technology is being used, Dave,
thank you, John.
I stepped all over you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, you didn't. Actually, I was wrapping up. I was talking about how India has the most people in a democracy on the planet, and they get the results in a day because they use the British one piece of paper system, and they have a simplified system because literacy came late to India, and so they had to have a system which everybody could easily understand in 5 minutes. It isn't easy to understand, even from over this border, how you guys managed to decide all this stuff in the U.S. It's mind-boggling. And the other one is the registration of voters. Like, we don't have an automated system for that. In Canada, you register with your tax, that you will be on the register and be listed. But it doesn't ask you whether you're Democrat or Republican. And
we do it with our car. Car registration.
We've been mystified up here as to why you have to declare. Like, that's your business. And they ask you, and then people tell them. And I'm going, you gave them the power right there.
Well, you mean to register as a Democrat or Republican? I mean, I can tell you why.
The reason they do
you can't vote in primaries if you don't.
Okay, primaries? Why do I need primaries?
That's a whole different, that you can make that argument.
That's baffling to us too. How you guys decide who's going to be available to elect.
Tamara, hold on 1 second. I just want to go back to something that Lois, at the very, very beginning, when you were talking about, I shared what you had shared earlier about different tools to accomplish the same goals. And I just want to bring in that John is mentioning in the chat, John Snyder, how naive it is to assume changing the means of voting will magically eliminate distrust sown by both sides of a broken system. We can throw out, like with everyone, we can throw out the technology, but that's not going to solve the problem. The question for me is, can technology help fix the problems? I understand that
people can use technology to fix the problems. Technology in itself can't do anything. It's not a person.
Right.
It can analyze data, but if I don't access it, then it's not going to do anything for me. One thing, Dave, you brought up that I think is key to talking about the differences between our countries is that you have more than 2 people on the ballot. When you are when you have such a strong binary of, then you have a country that is one or the other, and they're pitted against each other in a way that changes things in a not positive way, right? Because then you don't have you're like, oh, well, humans can just handle it. But if I don't trust that the human is on my side, that's where you're really that's where I think we've drifted away as a country into a place where we are no longer having conversations with people that we don't agree with. We're having conversations with only people we agree with, and it becomes
Mm-hmm.
an us and them,
Yeah.
and whatever side you're
Yeah.
on. And I think that does change,
Mm-hmm.
where it does seem like a simple system. We'll just let humans handle it.
Mm-hmm.
But in where our country is right now, you suddenly say we're not going to do machines, we're going to do humans, and then you have a binary of conversation of like, well, he didn't count my vote accurately. The
Mm-hmm.
machine in this particular case, technology does help us a little bit because we're like, it's a machine, it's
It
proven to
doesn't
work
care.
correctly, and the humans are the backup. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a tough situation in that way.
The idea of the
Can I
idea
put
of
out a
not being
warning
able to
about
rely on machines,
AI?
like I just want to vote from my phone. I don't even want to have to get off the
Mm.
couch.
You don't want to
I'm not sure.
You know that there
honor
are
your
so
vote,
many
I love
conspiracy
voting.
like,
theorists out there. If you were tried to vote with your phone, on Zoom, online, any of that stuff, because that allows more cheating. It allows more theft of votes. It allows more. There's more opportunities because there's more stuff between you and the vote. And the less
So
stuff you have between you and the vote, the more secure your vote is. Now, it may not
mhm,
mean that people trust it. I mean,
Right.
there are a lot of election workers who have been threatened with dire things just
sure.
because they work in the
Hmm.
election. But the more, so when you say technology, modern technology, yes. When we went to paper ballots, can you remember that far back? No, none of us are that old.
Hmm.
But when you went from marking a check in the book, what it is, to a paper ballot, there's new technology. Can you believe it? Can you trust it?
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our city has tried for 20 years to convince council that they would like to do online voting. And the thing that the lawyers say to them at the end is, how do you get a challenge and deal with the challenge of the vote? And there has to be a accommodation for that, or at least an accountability step, where if somebody challenged that
Right.
you have to find my vote amongst
Some
these
kind of
million and a
trail.
half
Yeah.
people. And if they can't do that online, if they can't immediately go to the database and say, did Dave vote? And did his serial number get used? And that's it, we're done. But they couldn't prove that they could do that because, of course, the guys who run the database aren't sophisticated that way. But the sense that we could do it is always in the back of people's mind. Why can't, and the kids will tell you, why can't I just open my phone between classes and do a vote and get it over with? Well, we've abdicated the responsibility of who tells us what we need to know to make the decision. And then we abdicate again when we say, I'll just let my phone do it. And then I'm done. And why should I even open my phone? I'll just do what my friends say. And then we'll get that vote that way.
All right.
So
So
I'm really concerned about that. Yeah.
let me branch off of that then, because I want to shift us to one other piece of this conversation. I spent a good deal of time over the past 100 days convincing my children that videos that they had seen online were not real. That either they were AI generated, or more likely they were just very strategically clipped, and they were not telling the whole story. This is not, of course, just in elections. It happens everywhere. It happens in between Russia and Ukraine. It's happening in
It's a great
Israel. It's
learning
happening.
opportunity too. Yeah.
So what these new amazing tools that are allowing us to create as if we were gods from nothing, to create
Mm-hmm.
videos, to create images, to create text, to create audio. How do these fit into free and fair elections? How do these fit into campaigns that are there to educate people so they can make thoughtful discussions? Leo, let me start with you.
So I'm going to take it a different way slightly, but on that same path. Um, I live in Richmond. For some of you, you'll know it as the place where Ted Lasso is. So anyway, that's why. The theatre down
That's
the
all that
road, we've
matters,
got
isn't it?
1980. Yeah, that
Yeah.
that matters. That's
That's
sport.
his
That's
authority
nearly,
right
nearly.
there. That's his
There you go.
authority.
There you go. There you go. So we've got the theatre's got the 1984 is coming on next week. A play, the play version of it, and I've been rereading the book, and I'm sure many of you have sat there and gone,
Yep.
you're reading all of this stuff, and you are absolutely sitting there going, we're living this. We're
Right.
living this manipulation of people in a way by media that they're just told, and this is the way that the authority, and that's the question, is how do you know that this is authority? Well, this isn't a new problem. Big tobacco used to tell you what you used to, that these cigarettes were healthy for you.
And
And we believed them.
And so and we believe them.
Right.
And and we are told by and in this case, whether you can argue where the control and the manipulation, that's not our question here today. But you're sitting there going, how do you authoritize something like this? How do you prove this? I just feel this is something that, as I said before, the one that normally gives you authority of something, the one that you're always trying to trust to actually do this, is you're asking the government with legislation to control something. And now you're asking the government legislation to control the government legislation and how they do their own electioneering.
Or
I mean, one of the other things, and Dave mentioned it very quickly, and he's right, we don't have this electioneering cycle like you do. We don't have paid voting, paid advertising.
We also have a
No paid
government-run election
advertising.
office. We don't let
It's
local
run by,
people
they
handle
have
the
a
election.
set
Yeah.
amount of money that they are allowed to spend. That's it. They are allowed to put out a political broadcast once. They're allowed to have everything fact checked. And then when they have meetings where they have one-to-one, I can't think of the word.
debate.
The debates, thank you. It's all controlled in a, it's not like, oh, well, I've decided I'm not going to turn up next week. These things are done in a completely different way when you take money out of the controlling mechanism. And
We actually had a
is a
an
different way.
amendment here in Florida on our ballot, which, by the way, that's a whole other, the way that ballots are written up. You said it before, Dave. I mean,
Brexit was the same
try
thing. It
and
was a
read
reverse
some of these
decision.
ballot measures I had to vote on. I didn't understand half of them. I had to research them. But one of them was to get some funding, private money out of and it failed miserably. Lois, go ahead.
Yeah.
So, just briefly on that one, there was a rule by the U.S. Senate judges that you can spend as much money as you want. But what I wanted to come back to is what David was saying about having free and fair elections and having the campaigns make free and fair elections. And I think you got it a little bit backwards there. The free and fair election part is using the technology in a way to run an election so that the people who register are registered and people can vote and their votes are counted and all of that stuff. But the campaigning, as long as there are individuals that are campaigning, they're going to be telling people what they want to hear, and they're not concerned with a free and fair election. They're concerned with getting in power. So I think we got to separate out those two things, the election part and the campaign.
There is a benefit to having computers and technology involved. I mean, I will tell you, if you don't, you're registered to vote in a certain place, and if you don't show up to that particular place, the technology has actually allowed us to do much quicker counting, much quicker being able to vote in a different location. Like if I am in New York and my ballot is in Los Angeles because it got sent there, I can provisionally vote. So it's like, I think there are there are things that technology in terms of the running of our elections is helpful. Now, the truth of the matter is in not Los Angeles, in the United States, part of the experiment that is our democracy, good, bad, indifferent, is that every state gets to make up they do it their own way. There are general election laws that have to be abided by nationally, but really everybody's kind of doing it the same way. And we saw it in things like counting the ballots, right? Some states were like, listen, last time it just took us too long to count. We're going to agree to start counting as soon as those absentee ballots come in within 10 days. Other states were like, I can't open a mail-in ballot till day of, right? So there's that part of it that makes that what you're talking about, you're like, it's just simple here. It is just simple, but there's so much about American politics that is just not simple, but is also the fundamental foundation of what our democracy is. And I'm not sure that I would want to change that.
I'm positive that I'm entirely naive about this, but let me just throw this out there. I was watching a video on, it started with Amazon, then there was another company, I don't remember which one, and how their big warehouses work with the robotics and everything, and how they've been able to take packages that used to take a week to 2 weeks and get it down to this afternoon. Right. We have managed to put people on the moon. We've managed to do single day shift. I mean, we have done so much, and yet somehow the best technology, from what I'm hearing from you, that we can come up with for voting is a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I get stuck. I'm just baffled by that.
But why?
That's not
Pencils
actually
still work.
That's not actually quite correct. The best technology that we can use would be something, and the machines exist, we tested them, where you are in a machine, you're making your choices in the machine, and then when you're done, it's all in there, it's all calculated, and it prints out something, so you have a receipt saying what you did. Now, if you can trust that the receipt you get out reflects the thing that you put in, then we're good to go. So it isn't just a paper ballot. It doesn't have to be. But as I say, there's hundreds of counties, and different counties are going to choose different things. And it may be because of trust. It may be because of money. I mean, if you do paper ballots and you only have this fancy machine, one per voting place because of accessibility issues for handicapped folks, well, then that's only one machine out of 20. So that's cheaper. But
that's no different than the grocery store or
right
the
now,
lottery machine.
We have mail-in ballots. There wasn't any question about it. We got sent a ballot, and you could, fill it out at home, and then you could take it in and you could drop it off, or you can mail it in, or you could, So that change came about for monetary reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mail-in ballots.
We're in the wrap-up phase, are we? We're closing up the show pretty soon here.
I was going.
I just want my 30 seconds. Yeah.
Wait, mail-in ballots.
California, everyone gets mail-in ballots in California.
Everyone does.
So everyone gets mail-in ballots.
It's fairly new.
Wow.
And you can start voting with you can start voting in person 10 days in advance, but your mail-in ballot, you can mail it in, drop it off into a ballot box, or you can take it in, surrender it, and vote in person.
Huh.
Those are your three options.
And that vote in person is primarily in case you screw it up.
Yeah.
So if the dog ate my homework, I can take that damaged thing in and go, oh, this didn't work. and I could do it in person.
All right.
And you get a receipt on your phone that says, or on your email that says your ballot has been accepted, your ballot has been counted. I know that.
Does it tell you what was on your ballot? Is it a true receipt?
Does not tell me what was on my ballot.
So that's the piece that Lois was talking about that we really need.
Right.
Is that paper trail. Okay, so let me ask you this. Let's just do a quick round. Each person, then we'll wrap up. What is either a technology that you wish we had to ensure safe, secure, fair elections, or a technology that we do have that is contributing toward that. Let's end on a positive note. Let's go to Leo.
I think it's hard. I think, as I say, the problem with all technology is always that it's the use of it. And Lois came out with some, it's fabulous. We know that it can work. It seems to work for the lotto. It seems to work for when you're doing your tax returns. It seems to work for all of these things. All of these things have been changed so that you can do these things electronically, and we trust them. The issue is, and I guess I'm going to be a little bit slightly controversial here. The result that you achieved reduced the amount of people questioning the result. It was such a big result in one direction. If it had been either halfway or anywhere in the other direction, we would be having we could be having a very different conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right. Lois, a technology that you think is helpful or would be helpful?
Not really. No, yes, technology is useful, but I think the things about our elections that need to be changed are people. And we had, and I put it in the past tense, unfortunately, we had wonderful, wonderful election workers. And I think a lot of those election workers in the country got scared off. And so now we're having to rely on technology because it's so hard to find the humans that are willing to put up with the danger. I'm sorry, that was a downer. Okay,
No.
Good technology is the ability to pet kittens. How's that?
No, that's fantastic. And by the way, I should also say, John is mentioning this in the chat, and thank you, John, that overall, the voting process is open and secure. There have been a few cases, and they've in large part been unsubstantiated, and that really is important to mention. When I say that, is there a technology that will help elections become? I should not even suggest or approach implying that they're not, because they are. They absolutely are. There is a perception that they're not, and maybe that's, I don't know, but maybe technology could help us out there. Dave, some piece of tech that can help us out here. What do you think?
I'm going to begin by saying I have no right to tell Americans what to watch out for or to warn you against, but technology is going to do this. You ready?
All right.
AI is going to make you anticipatory obedience. What's going to happen is people are going to decide not to do something because they're afraid. I saw this in Discord today when I read back about us being on the panel and some people being worried about X. That's anticipatory obedience. Resist that to your core. Tell everybody about it. Let them read Timothy Snyder's book on tyranny and learn how to work this system and take away the power. Now, we've all given the power to TikTok, social media, and you can take it back. And I've been campaigning on this for a couple of years now, not on office hours or anything, but in my own social media circles. I'm warning people about this, that you're being groomed to accept ideas that are stupid. And
Tamara,
we've been watching a man melt on television and do dancing, and he's a candidate. The sane washing got to me real early, and I'm not putting up with it in my country.
Tamara, I want to come to you, but Leo's about to lose his
authoritarians.
Mind. Leo, go ahead.
There you
No
go.
problem.
Leo, take it away.
I did a live event earlier today for a Holocaust survivor, and her takeaway point at the end of the event was to say the biggest problem that she thinks at the moment is cancel culture. And cancel culture is stopping people responding and talking and saying anything, because they're the fear that if they say anything, they're going to be just cut off. And actually, as she said, and this is like a 80, 90-year-old lady, was saying, The problem is what you're actually that people who are pro that are pro say they're freedom of speech, but actually they are the exact opposite because they're shutting one side of a conversation down. And exactly what Dave is saying, you're risking this massive thing that the only point of conversation is a point of conversation controlled by somebody whose objective is to stop the other conversation. And that's all being controlled by technology and cancel culture.
Tamara, what do you want to add?
I I've actually really enjoyed watching technology grow and our elections change and voting because I feel like voting is safer now. I feel like voting is more secure and more accurate than it has been in the past. And when no one's deciding if there's a hanging Chad, that was like who even thought about that was a thing before 2000. But but I have to agree with everyone else. I really think that where we as a society it, I love technology, but I am finding that we're getting more distance from humanity. And even being able to, mail in my ballot, it has taken something. I mean, I had my parents every year had voting in our house, and that piece of participating in an event that was a national event, there's something about that that's missing. And I think that there's we're struggling as a culture and as a society to discern what is accurate and what isn't accurate. And I think that's going to be something that comes through education, and it's going to come through people, and possibly could come through AI, but I don't want to be trusting only of that. I want us to get to a point where we can be diligent about learning what is influencing us. And I agree, cancel culture is a huge problem. If we're not willing to have a conversation with someone because we're afraid of being canceled or canceling someone else, then those conversations aren't going to happen. Those influences of influencing from people to people, that's gonna move away. And that's the part that I miss. I miss having conversations where I didn't agree with you politically, but I absolutely could have respect you as a human. And that's one of the things that has happened in our divide. And I miss that I get to have conversations where it's like, I think the world should run like this. You think the world should run like that, but I don't think you're a bad person. And that's one of the things that I think is where we're in a tricky spot right now. And we don't know what is right or what is wrong when things are just flying at you. We have to really think about what media literacy means and what our personal responsibility is within this greater technology.
We generally, as a rule, don't talk about politics on office hours, and so wanting to talk about technology and politics for me was me wanting to test the waters a little bit, because I really do believe that technology has become fundamental in every aspect of our lives. Certainly, no less in elections and campaigning. And I also believe that we're all adults and that we can have a thoughtful, respectful, meaningful, deep conversation without getting stuck in the weeds and the politics and the mud of it. So I'm grateful to you, Lois and Leo and Tamara and Dave for joining me. I'm really just so thankful for your time tonight and helping unpack some of this. If you would like to join us on the panel, just reach out to me over in Discord. You can go to therundown.show and say hello. I've got to let Leo go to bed now. He's so tired. But Lois, you had something you wanted to throw out real quick?
What is your one technology that you think will improve our elections?
Well, we have to go. I'm really sorry about that. We're just running by one technology. Here's what I'll tell you. I don't have a technology, but I do have a question. And the question for me is, I feel a real tension between access and security. And my default is to make things as easily accessible as possible. If we think about Zoom, right? I don't have a passcode on my Zoom meetings. I use the same PMI, I use the same personal meeting identifier for every meeting. I never use different. I know that that's not secure. I also know that that allows for the easiest access for people. And so I always come out on the side of access. So when I think about voting, I think about as naive as it sounds, I think about allowing people to vote by phone. I think about making sure that accessibility for those who have have vision issues or hearing issues or mobility issues, that all of those things, that we do everything we possibly can to allow people to vote. My mother-in-law, who just passed away last week, she and I voted together by mail. Thank goodness she could vote by mail. So the technology that I'm yearning for is one that allows for the most accessibility and participation, while also keeping us as safe as possible. And I that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
What does exist is some wonderful conversations. And again, I'm grateful to all of you. TheRundown.show. That's where you can find us. That's where you can join the panel. We will be back next week. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Bye.